Welcome to Auto Care Master. Today, we are diving into one of the most important and, frankly, confusing questions for any car owner. So is the oil recommended in your owner's manual really the best for your engine's long-term health? Let us dig in, because understanding this could literally save you from a very expensive repair bill down the road. You know, when it comes to motor oil, you'll quickly find there are two very different and very loud schools of thought. On one side, you have the official line, straight from the people who built your car. And on the surface, this makes perfect sense, right? After all, modern engines are these amazing pieces of engineering with incredibly tight tolerances. They're specifically designed to run on these newer, thinner oils. But then, on the other side, you've got experienced mechanics and longtime car enthusiasts who are basically sounding the alarm. They argue that the official advice is a compromise, which leaves the rest of us stuck in the middle, wondering who to believe. So, to really get to the bottom of this debate, we have got to ask a really fundamental question. Why did car makers switch to these ultra-thin oils like 0W-20 in the first place? Because it was not purely for engineering reasons. The main driver, especially here in the United States, is a government regulation called CAFE. Now, in simple terms, this means automakers face absolutely massive fines if the average fuel economy across all the new cars they sell falls below a certain target. And this right here is the heart of the issue. A thinner oil reduces the internal friction in an engine just enough to give a tiny but crucial boost in fuel economy. When you multiply that little gain across millions of vehicles, it helps manufacturers meet those regulations and avoid millions, sometimes even billions of dollars in fines. The oil is optimized for a test, not necessarily for a lifetime of driving. And here is a huge clue. The exact same engine in the exact same car often recommends a thicker, more protective oil when it is sold in places like Europe or Australia. The engine's parts do not change when they cross the ocean, but the government regulations sure do. So this leads us to the most important question of all. What is the hidden trade-off for that tiny little fuel economy gain that keeps the regulators happy? The big concern from so many mechanics is that this focus on fuel economy comes at the direct expense of long-term engine protection. See, the manufacturer's main goal is to get the car through its warranty period while hitting those efficiency numbers. What happens after that? Well, that is not really their problem. Think about it like this. Your engine relies on this microscopic film of oil to keep all those fast-moving metal parts from grinding each other into dust. A thinner oil can mean a thinner, less tough protective film, especially when your engine gets hot or is under a heavy load, and that is exactly when wear happens. So instead of just arguing about theories, let us look at some cold, hard data. A real-world engine test put the three most common oil viscosities head-to-head to see what would happen. All right, check this out. They took a modern four-cylinder engine and ran it for 7,500 miles on each oil, under the exact same conditions, and the results are pretty eye-opening. The manufacturer recommended 0W-20 ran the hottest. It lost its thickness the fastest, and here's the kicker, it resulted in the highest amount of wear metals showing up in the oil analysis. And we are not talking about a small difference. It is staggering. Just by switching from the recommended 0W-20 to a slightly thicker 5W-30, the amount of wear metals, which are literally tiny particles of your engine, found in the oil dropped by 35 to 40%. That is huge. Looking at this chart, the difference in engine protection is just stark. It is not even close. You can see the 0W-20 oil resulted in way more wear. The 5W-30 offered a massive improvement in protection, and the even thicker 5W-40 was better still, though as we will see, that comes with a small trade-off. So while that super thick 5W-40 was the absolute king for extreme stress like towing or track driving, the 5W-30 was the clear winner for protecting the engine in the real world. You know, from city traffic to highway cruising, it is the perfect sweet spot. Okay, so what does all this mean for you when you are standing in the auto parts store staring at that giant wall of oil bottles? Let us break it down into a simple guide based on how you actually use your car. The key thing to remember here is that no oil is universally bad. It is all about matching the oil's strengths to your reality. If you live in a super cold climate or your number one priority is squeezing every last mile out of a gallon of gas, 0W-20 is perfectly fine. But for most people, if you want your engine to last as long as possible, especially once it is past 60,000 miles, 5W-30 is simply a smarter choice for long-term protection. And if you are worried about your car's warranty, do not be. In the US, there is a federal law called the Magnuson-Moss Act that protects you. As long as you use a quality oil that meets the manufacturer's performance spec, you'll see it on the bottle, something like API-SP, they cannot legally deny a warranty claim just because you chose a different, more protective viscosity. You know, when you ask them off the record, the people who actually fix cars for a living, the mechanics, they almost universally choose thicker, more stable oils for their own vehicles. And that right there says a whole lot. So the crucial takeaway here is this: your engine does not care about regulations on a spreadsheet. It just cares about having a strong, stable film of oil that can stand up to heat and pressure year after year. The mistake is not using the wrong oil. It is not questioning if the right one is truly the best for your car's long-term health. We really hope this helped clear up what is a very confusing topic. We would love to know what oil you are running in your car. Let us know down in the comments below. And if you found this helpful, please do us a favor and hit that like button, share it with a friend, and of course, subscribe to Auto Care Master for more deep dives into taking care of your car. Thanks so much for watching, and join us next time as we break down whether those super expensive ceramic coatings are actually any better for your paint than good old-fashioned wax. You will not want to miss it. Hello and welcome to Auto Care Master. It is great to have you with us. You know, if you have popped the hood on a newer car lately, you might have noticed something a little different on the oil cap. That familiar 5W-30 is disappearing, and in its place, you see these new ultra-thin oils like 0W-20 or even 0W-16. So today, we are going to dive right into the big debate this has started. Is this new, almost watery-looking oil actually good for our engines, or is something else going on? And let's be honest, this is the question on everyone's mind, isn't it? It just feels wrong. Your gut tells you that something this thin cannot possibly be protecting a complex, expensive engine. So is this big push for thinner oil just setting us all up for a future of widespread engine failures? Is it a ticking time bomb? And this is not just some wild conspiracy theory from a dark corner of the web. You see comments just like this one all over car forums from owners who are genuinely concerned. This one says, the only reason they are using the thin oil is to meet government requirements from miles per gallon. The box is designed for you to destroy your car. Planned obsolescence. That is a really strong belief, and it is rooted in this idea that this is all about regulations, not what is best for your car. We are going to get to the bottom of that. All right, so let's frame the problem. We will call our first section the thin oil dilemma. It really gets to the heart of the issue. You have the people who built your car telling you to use this new stuff, but then you have got decades of experience and just common sense telling you that a thicker oil means better protection. That is the dilemma we are going to unpack. So, to really understand why this is happening, we have to look at the massive force that has been driving this change for years. And that brings us to our next part, the Great Miles Per Gallon Mandate. You see, this whole shift did not just happen because some engineers thought it was a good idea. It was a direct result of decades of increasing pressure. And that pressure has a name, CAFE, which stands for Corporate Average Fuel Economy. These are federal standards that were first put into place way back in 1975. And their goal is pretty simple: to force car manufacturers to make their entire lineup of cars more fuel efficient every single year. Now, take a look at this timeline. For decades, the standard was pretty flat. It sat right around 27.5 miles per gallon for a long time. But look what happens after 2012. It just skyrockets. The pressure on car makers to squeeze every last drop of efficiency out of their cars, no matter how small the improvement, became absolutely immense. And here is the hammer that enforces those rules. For every single tenth of a mile per gallon that a car company's fleet falls short of the standard, they get a penalty of $14. Now, that does not sound like much, right? But that is $14 multiplied by every single car they sell in the United States. For a company selling millions of cars, that can add up to hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars in fines. And all of a sudden, a tiny 1 or 2% fuel economy gain from using thinner oil is not so tiny anymore. It is a massive financial decision. So that explains why the automakers are pushing for thin oil. Now, let's get into the arguments about what it actually does inside your engine. This section is protection versus performance, and we are going to look at both sides of the story because honestly, both arguments sound really convincing. So first, let's start with the case against thin oil, the one that confirms a lot of our fears. Critics point out that modern engines are already under a ton of stress. They are smaller, they often have turbos, they use direct injection. The argument is that a thinner film of oil is just more likely to break down under all that pressure. And here's the kicker. They point to a major recall of some General Motors V8 engines, where the official fix from the manufacturer was to switch the engines from 0W-20 to a thicker oil. That is a huge deal. It is a real-world example that makes people, very understandably, nervous. And this image of a truck fleet really puts the motivation into perspective. For a big commercial operation, just a 1% saving on fuel can mean millions of dollars every year. So you can imagine, for a global car company facing those massive CAFE fines, the temptation to prioritize that small efficiency gain is incredibly strong. But of course, that is only one side of the coin. The case for using thin oil is just as strong, and it is all based on modern engineering. The first point is that it actually provides better protection when you start your car. Did you know that something like 75% of all engine wear happens right at startup? Well, thin oil gets flowing to all the critical parts much faster when the engine is cold. Plus, a lot of modern engine systems, like variable valve timing, actually need that thin oil to work properly. But the most important argument is that today's engines are just completely different machines. And that brings us to the most important idea from the pro-thin oil camp. And it is summed up perfectly right here. Thinner does not mean weaker. The whole idea is that modern synthetic oils get their strength and protective ability from advanced chemistry and additives, not just from being thick and goopy. It is a totally new way of thinking about lubrication. So, how do we figure out who is right in this debate? The answer is in our next section, a new breed of engine. We have to wrap our heads around the fact that we are not just putting new oil into the same old engines. We are putting new oil into a completely different kind of machine. The rules have changed because the entire game has changed. And this right here, this slide, is the big aha moment. Just look at the difference in the internal clearances of the engine bearings. In your grandpa's old engine, the gaps between moving parts were 2 to 3 thousandths of an inch. You needed a thick, honey-like oil to fill up that space. But in a modern engine built with incredible precision, those gaps can be 5 times smaller. We are talking about a space that is thinner than a human hair. So trying to force thick oil through those tiny passages is like trying to push molasses through a drinking straw. It just doesn't work. The oil cannot get where it needs to go, especially when the engine is cold. And it is not just about those tight spaces. Modern engines have super strong, low-friction coatings on their internal parts. The oils themselves have incredibly sophisticated additives that are designed to work perfectly with these new materials. The key takeaway here is that you have to think of the engine and the oil as a single system. They were literally designed together, tested together, and built to work in perfect harmony. So, that brings us to the final and most important section. We have heard the arguments, we have looked at the science. So what is the final answer for your engine? What oil should you actually be putting in your car? Well, the good news is the answer is incredibly simple. This little guide cuts through all of the arguments and all of the noise online. The bottom line is this: follow the manufacturer's specification. The engineers who spent years designing the complex system that is your engine know exactly what fluid it needs to run properly and last a long time. Because the risks of getting this wrong are very real, and they go both ways. If you put oil that is too thick in a modern engine, you could starve it of lubrication on startup, cause problems with important systems, and even void your warranty. And on the flip side, putting oil that is too thin in an older engine designed for thicker stuff can cause exactly the kind of accelerated wear that everyone is so worried about. And when you use the correct modern oil, the benefits are not just theoretical. They are real, and you can measure them. As this chart shows, just moving from a traditional 5W-30 to a modern 0W-16 can give you a fuel economy boost of up to 4%. So it is not just about passing some government test, it is a real improvement that you will actually see at the gas pump. So while the debate might continue to rage on in online forums, the engineering truth is pretty clear. Modern engines are a whole new beast, and they require a new kind of protection. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. With even thinner oils like 0W-8 already being used in some parts of the world, and completely new fluids being developed for electric vehicles, it is clear this evolution is not stopping anytime soon. So what do you think the next great leap in protecting our cars will look like? Thank you so much for joining us here at Auto Care Master. If you found this helpful, please hit that like button, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe to the Auto Care Master channel so you do not miss our next explainer. We appreciate your support, and we will see you next time.